explosive news from our own Catherine Herridge. The memos that Jim Comey leaked to the media that ultimately became the catalyst, his desire for the appointment of special counsel Robert Mueller, they were more widely shared than he previously disclosed. Now, last year, Comey told Congress that he leaked this memo to his friend, Professor Daniel Richman of Columbia University. Now, tonight, sources are revealing that Comey's current lawyer, longtime friend, Patrick Fitzgerald, you may remember the Scooter Libby case, was also given this potentially classified information in these documents, and sources are also claiming that Comey may have leaked the memos to yet another unnamed individual. Now, just moments ago, here's how James Comey tried to explain all of these leaks that he never told us about before.
I sent one memo, unclassified then, still unclassified, and it's recounted in my book, to my friend Dan Richman and asked him to get the substance of it, but not the memo, out to the media. Separately, I wrote a bunch of memos about my interactions with President Trump, and I was what was called an original classification authority at the FBI, meaning I had the training and the authority to make decisions about what should be classified, what shouldn't. Some of those memos I decided should be classified. 4 others, I wrote them and was highly confident they should not be classified. Those 4, I kept a copy at the FBI and a copy in my personal safe at home. After I was fired, I put together a legal team of 3 people, one of whom was Professor Dan Richman at Columbia University. After I had asked him to give this information to the media, I separately gave my legal team 4 memos, which were unclassified. The bottom line is, I see no credible claim by any serious person that that violated the law.
Yeah, that's like Obama saying no serious person could think Russia could ever have any tampering in our elections. Now, contrary to what Comey just said, in just moments, we will have multiple credible individuals, including former U.S. Attorney Joe DeGeneva, shine some light on Comey's serious misdeeds. Now, CNN went on to press Comey on his potentially illegal leaking. Amazing. Watch this.
You did leak memos. I mean, is it okay for somebody at the FBI to leak something, an internal document, even if it's not classified? Isn't that leaking?
Well, there's a whole lot wrong with your question, Anderson. First, I didn't leak memos. I asked a friend to communicate the substance of one unclassified memo.
Whether you...
Can I finish for a second?
Sure, okay.
One unclassified memo to the media, and I was really important. I was a private citizen. I was not an FBI employee at that time.
But it was an internal document. It was a document you had written while you were FBI director. That is a leak. I mean, if you tell somebody, don't give them the document, but tell them what's in the document, that's still a leak, no?
Well, not to get tangled up in it, I think of a leak as an unauthorized disclosure of classified information.
Really? That's it?
Has Anderson been secretly watching this show? Now, remember, in June of last year, James Comey made no mention of this during his testimony before Congress. Take a look.
Did you show copies of your memos to anyone outside of the Department of Justice?
Yes.
And to whom did you show copies?
I asked, President tweeted on Friday after I got fired that I better hope there's not tapes. I woke up in the middle of the night on Monday night, because it didn't dawn on me originally, that there might be corroboration for our conversation. There might be a tape. And my judgment was I needed to get that out into the public square. And so I asked a friend of mine to share the content of the memo with a reporter. Didn't do it myself for a variety of reasons, but I asked him to because I thought that might prompt the appointment of a special counsel. And so I asked a close friend of mine to do it.
And was that Mr. Wittes?
No, no.
Who was that?
A good friend of mine who's a professor at Columbia Law School.
Now, remember, he was under oath. That means even more jeopardy for Jim Comey tonight. And was James Comey withholding information from Congress? Did he lie by omission? Now, this is damning new revelations that are surrounding whether or not the fired FBI director acted in an unethical and potentially illegal way after he was fired. And tonight we can confirm that the Office for the Inspector General is investigating Jim Comey, the disgraced former FBI director. For months on this program, we have been predicting that Jim Comey could well, in fact, be facing serious legal consequences for these actions. And earlier this week, the president weighed in. Remember, he wrote, James Comey illegally leaked classified documents to the press in order to generate a special counsel. Therefore, the special counsel was established based on an illegal act. Really? Does everybody know what that means? Now, even CNN's top liberal legal analyst, a total lib, is weighing in. And even he acknowledges this is not looking good for Jim Comey.
What is the president implying there? Well, what he's saying is that when James Comey took those memos that recounted his conversations with the president and gave them to Professor Dan Richman at Columbia University, that was an illegal leak, especially since he considered, he knew that Richman was going to give that to the press.
But are notes about a conversation with the president taken by then a private citizen, are those classified?
They may or may not be. And in fact, when the administration or Congress released some versions of those memos, some of the portions were blacked out. I think James Comey actually is in a pretty vulnerable position here. Just because something is not marked classified doesn't mean that after the fact it couldn't be retroactively designated classified. I think Comey may really have a problem there.
Yeah, he may have a problem. Now, this potential legal jeopardy is not stopping Comey from living it up. Now, cashing in on his newfound fame and fortune, the Trump-hating former FBI director threw himself a big party at what is called the Newseum in Washington, D.C., an appropriate venue, given that many of Comey's honored guests hailed from the mainstream media. So let's hope Jim Comey made a good impression. After all, we do know this book tour and this media blitz is just one big tryout for Comey's future career, if he wants one, as a pundit on conspiracy TV, MSNBC, or fake news CNN. It is a new political landscape in America. Famed rapper, fashion designer Kanye West has now issued a very glowing endorsement of President Trump. He took to Twitter, telling his millions of Twitter followers, quote, "You don't have to agree with Trump, but the mob can't make me not love him." Now, we are both dragon energy. He is my brother. I love everyone. I don't agree with everything anyone does. Well, that's what makes us individuals, and we have the right to independent thought. And Kanye West even posted a picture of himself wearing a Make America Great Again hat, driving liberals on social media totally insane tonight. And get this, Kanye is even slamming former President Obama for his utter failure in the former president's own hometown of Chicago, writing, quote, "Obama was in office for 8 years and nothing in Chicago changed." Now, Kanye West is absolutely right. We talked about this a lot. Under the Obama administration, nearly 4,000 people were murdered on the streets of Chicago, his hometown. Obama barely mentioned it, did nothing. This was American lives, American treasure lost, tragedy, travesty. Now, of course, this all started after Kanye West publicly stood up for a black conservative, a woman that we had on the program this week, Candace Owens, after many on the left slammed her remarks at UCLA. Take a look at this.
What is happening right now in the black community, you're going to hear it in this room first. There's an ideological civil war happening. Black people that are focused on their past and shouting about slavery, and black people that are focused on their futures. Victim mentality is not cool. I don't know why people like being oppressed. It's the weirdest thing I've ever heard. I love oppression. We're oppressed. 400 years of slavery, Jim Crow, which, by the way, none of you guys lived through. Your grandparents did, and it's embarrassing that you utilize their history. You utilize their history, and you come in here with more emotion than they ever had when they were living through it. More emotion than they ever had when they were living through it. It's embarrassing. You're not living through anything right now. You're overly privileged Americans.
Amazing moment. Star is born. And while Kanye West takes a stand for freedom of thought and freedom of expression, we should all support this. Over at CNN, you have your professional Trump hater, so-called journalist, Jim Acosta. Well, he's doing the exact opposite and going completely off the rails, claiming that Americans could be inspired by Trump's rhetoric, calling out liberal media bias, and actually commit acts of violence against the president, against the press. Does he not remember Madonna's remarks about desiring and dreaming of blowing up the White House or the severed head or any of the other instances in the anthrax scare? Watch this.
The problem is that people around the country don't know it's an act. They're not in on the act, and they take what he says very seriously, and they take attacks from Sean Spicer and Sarah Sanders and what they do to us on a daily basis very seriously. They don't have all their faculties in some cases. Their elevator might not hit all floors. My concern is that that a journalist is going to be hurt one of these days. Somebody's going to get hurt, and at that point, you know, the White House, the President of the United States, they're going to have to take a hard look in the mirror and ask themselves whether or not they played a role in this.
How many threats against the president? Who talks about blowing up the White House, putting up severed heads as a joke? Now, we have known for some time that Jim Acosta lives in a paranoid, anti-Trump state of delusion. Now, some call it Trump derangement syndrome, but Jim Acosta and his friends and the fake news media, they need to wake up. President Trump is not the source of all of your problems. And to complain that his honest discussion about the state of the media in this country is going to incite violence, that is a step too far and patently, frankly, absurd.